If you've been curious about shadow work, but also kind of terrified to start, this video is for you. Because honestly, a lot of people talk about shadow work like it's this intense, overwhelming process where you suddenly uncover every painful thing you've ever experienced. And while shadow work can be deep and emotional, it doesn't have to be scary. You are not supposed to traumatize yourself in the name of healing. Shadow work is not about becoming consumed by darkness. It's about understanding yourself more honestly, compassionately, and deeply. It's about healing the parts of you that learn to hide. The insecure parts, the rejected parts, the angry parts, the fearful parts, the people-pleasing parts, the emotionally guarded parts. And the truth is, most of us already carry shadow aspects without realizing it. So in this video, we are going to talk about what shadow work actually is, why people are scared of it, how to start gently as a beginner, what to avoid, and simple shadow work exercises that feel safe and manageable. And at the end, I'll give you practical action steps you can start using immediately. So take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let's get into it. Let's start simple. Shadow work is the process of becoming aware of the parts of yourself you've rejected, suppressed, hidden, or avoided. These shadow parts usually develop because at some point we learn that certain emotions, needs, or traits were unsafe or unacceptable. For example, maybe you learned being emotional made you too sensitive. Maybe expressing anger caused conflict. Being confident called you arrogant. Asking for help made you feel weak. Making mistakes led to criticism. So instead of expressing the certain parts of yourself naturally, you buried them. That doesn't mean those parts disappear. They usually show up indirectly through triggers, anxiety, self-sabotage, jealousy, perfectionism, people-pleasing, and emotional avoidance. And fear of rejection, fear of failure, and repeating unhealthy patterns. So shadow work helps bring awareness to those patterns, not to shame yourself, but to understand yourself. Because awareness creates choice, and choice creates healing. A lot of people avoid shadow work because they think, what if I uncover something painful? What if I can't handle it? What if healing changes me? What if I realize things I've been avoiding? And honestly, those fears are understandable. Shadow work asks us to become emotionally honest. And emotional honesty can feel vulnerable, especially if you've spent years surviving by staying distracted, emotionally numb, overly busy, or disconnected from yourself. But here's something important. You do not need to force yourself into emotional overwhelm to heal. Healing is not supposed to feel emotionally violent. You are allowed to go slowly. You are allowed to take breaks. You are allowed to process things differently, process things gently. Shadow work is not about drowning in pain. It's about creating enough safety to finally look at yourself with honesty and compassion. That changes everything. I think one of the biggest misconceptions about shadow work is the idea that your shadow is evil or negative. It's not. Your shadow often contains hurt, fear, unmet needs, protective behaviors, survival responses, and unprocessed emotions. A lot of your shadow developed to protect you. For example, people-pleasing may have protected you from rejection. Perfectionism may have helped you feel safe. Emotional walls may have protected your heart. Hyper-independence may have formed because you learned relying on others felt unsafe. Your shadow is not your enemy. It's often a younger version of you trying to survive. That's why self-compassion matters so much during shadow work. You're not trying to destroy parts of yourself, you're trying to understand them. A lot of people secretly approach healing like this. If I heal enough, I'll finally become perfect. But healing is not perfection. Shadow work is not about becoming emotionless, endlessly positive, or spiritually superior. You are still human. You will still make mistakes, feel insecure sometimes, get triggered, feel emotional, have fears, and continue growing. The goal isn't perfection, the goal is awareness. Because awareness helps you respond differently instead of repeating patterns unconsciously. For example, instead of immediately people-pleasing, you notice it. Instead of shutting down emotionally, you recognize the fear underneath it. Instead of spiraling into shame, you become curious about what triggered you. That awareness creates emotional freedom over time. One mistake beginners make is trying to heal their entire life in one weekend. You do not need to force huge breakthroughs immediately. Sometimes shadow work starts with very small questions, like, why did that comment upset me so much? Why do I fear disappointing people? Why do I struggle to rest without guilt? Why do I need constant validation? Why do I feel uncomfortable receiving love? Why do I avoid conflict? Why do I feel responsible for everyone else's emotions? These questions aren't meant to shame you. They're invitations for self-awareness. You do not need to pressure yourself to uncover every drama immediately. Go slowly enough that your nervous system still feels safe. That's important. One of the most powerful ways to begin shadow work is by paying attention to your triggers. A trigger is usually an emotional reaction that feels bigger than the current situation. For example, feeling deeply rejected over small things, becoming extremely defensive, intense jealousy, fear of abandonment, shutting down emotionally, feeling panic around criticism, and needing constant reassurance. Your triggers are not proof that you're broken, they're information. They often point towards unresolved wounds, fears, beliefs, or unmet emotional needs. Instead of immediately judging yourself when triggered, try asking, what is this reaction trying to protect me from? That question creates curiosity instead of shame. And curiosity is much more healing. You do not need complicated rituals to start shadow work. Journaling is one of the most effective tools. And no, you do not need to write perfectly. You just need honesty. So here are some beginner shadow work prompts. What do I fear people would judge me for? What emotions do I avoid most? What traits in other people trigger me? When do I feel most insecure? What did I need emotionally as a child that I did not receive enough of? What role do I constantly play in relationships? What part of myself do I struggle to accept? And what am I constantly trying to prove? You do not need to answer everything at once. Even one honest journal entry can create powerful awareness. This is something people don't talk about enough. Sometimes shadow work includes grief. Not just grief for painful experiences, but grief for the version of you that struggles silently. Grief for the love you needed, the boundaries you didn't know how to set, the years spent abandoning yourself, or the way you minimized your own pain, and that grief is valid. Healing sometimes means acknowledging what hurt instead of pretending it didn't matter. But remember, feeling emotions is not failure, crying is not failure, resting is not failure, and needing support is not failure. Your emotions are not problems to eliminate. They are experiences to understand. This is extremely important. If your healing journey is making you hate yourself more, something needs to shift. Shadow work is not, I'm toxic, I'm broken, I'm a bad person. Healthy shadow work sounds more like, now I understand why I developed this pattern. I see how this protected me in the past. I can respond differently now. I deserve healing too. The goal is integration, not self-destruction. The goal is learning to hold all parts of yourself with honesty and compassion, even the imperfect parts, especially the imperfect parts. I also want to say this clearly. You do not have to do deep healing completely alone. Support matters. That could look like therapy, trusted friends, support groups, coaching, journaling, meditation, or safe online communities. Sometimes healing becomes easier when we stop isolating ourselves emotionally, and if shadow work ever feels too overwhelming, it's okay to slow down and seek support. That is strength, not weakness. If you've been scared to start shadow work, I want you to remember this. You do not need to rush yourself into emotional intensity to heal. You do not need to uncover every painful memory immediately. You do not need to become fearless before beginning. Healing often starts with simple awareness, with honesty, and with gentleness, and with curiosity. And the fact that you even want to understand yourself more deeply already says a lot about your growth. Your shadow is not proof that you are broken. It's proof that you are human. And healing becomes much softer when you stop treating yourself like a problem to fix. Okay, your action steps. Start a shadow work journal. Dedicate one notebook or notes app specifically for self-reflection. Do not worry about writing. Focus on honesty. Then notice your triggers this week. Instead of judging your reactions, ask, what is this reaction trying to protect me from? That question alone can create powerful awareness. Then practice self-compassion during your reflection. If difficult emotions come up, avoid immediately criticizing yourself. Speak to yourself gently. Healing works better in safe environments, including the environment you create internally. Choose one journal prompt. Do not overwhelm yourself with 50 prompts. Pick one question and sit with it slowly. Then ground yourself after your shadow work. After journaling or emotional processing, go for a walk, drink water, listen to calming music, stretch, rest, do something comforting. Emotional safety matters. If this video resonated with you, be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more manifestation and mindset tricks and tips. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.